often Tanty Table. Tanty Table is Berlin's first English-speaking podcast hosted by an all-women of color panel. In each episode, the hosts Ria Ramjan, Armagan Tahiri, and Hoitzi Moncho invite special guests to the table to discuss everything from the breaking of stereotypes and assumptions about women of color in Europe to travel, intimacy, friendship, bad dates, and much more. Another favorite of mine is the first Polish addition to the Bear Radio family, Stories from the Eastern West. This podcast shares little-known histories from Central and Eastern Europe that changed our world. There's their mini-series, The Final Curtain, that features personal tales from the Eastern Bloc's collapse. And they just dropped a brand new third season, which includes stories from the exclusion zone of Chernobyl, the start of the 1980 revolution in Poland, and a chaotic story of what was meant to be Europe's greatest science fiction film. Join hosts Nitzan Reisner, Adam Żuławski, and Wojciech Oleksiak as they bring each of these stories to life. Finally, there's writer and DJ Paul Hanford and his podcast Lost and Sound. Paul goes on a journey to uncover how people come together through music, honing in on the cultural hotspots of Berlin, Kiev, and now, with a third season, remote locations across the world. He meets artists from a range of disciplines and explores themes such as the connection between music, cities, and identity, and how music can play a role in our lives in the future. There are currently 22 podcasts and hundreds of episodes available for you, so head over to bearradio.org and get listening.
And I guess the reason why living in Morocco makes me identify more with my Indonesian identity is because since I came here, I think I went back to Indonesia like 3 times already. So within a period of 1.5 years, like I've gone back to Indonesia for some visit and for like extended like holidays and things like that. And it's been sort of a good feeling as well to come back and to come to terms with where you come from and to also learn more about how as a person you've transformed and how, you know, the society in which you were brought up also has transformed and how things have changed. And also in my case, to give my family a chance to get to know me a little bit better and for me to get to know them better and to just bridge these differences, right? Rather than try to escape from it all the time.
The relationships that third culture people have with their families is something that really interests me. Specifically, I really wanted to know, how do people who have distanced themselves from their families because of being different begin making inroads again? Where do you start, and how exactly do you do it?
I don't know. I don't know if I've started properly. I mean, I told you about this new strategy that I developed to sort of share my opinions or my honest opinions more in a gradual manner, right, to my parents or to my family. But I think it's going to be a long way. And I don't think I've gathered all the courage yet to really invest more time and energy in it. But I think for me personally, one of the important steps in it is also to listen more, right? To sort of put myself in other people's shoes and to consider what the other person is facing in his or her life and to kind of shift away from this urge to share my opinions and like to listen more in order to understand rather than to respond.
Mm.
And I think that has been very beneficial, not only in terms of my relationship with my family, but also in terms of how I see the world in general and how I see the behaviors of people and societies. And so I talk to my mom quite regularly, you know, through Skype. And what I would do is I would just listen to her sharing her experience. For example, she was having like issues with my oldest brother, or she was having issues with my father. And it's quite nice and fortunate that we've always had this ability to talk to one another, like as long as it doesn't concern like religion or like, you know, like bisexuality or things like that, then we would always have this ability to listen to one another. You know, okay, I would have a call with her and then listen to her stories, but I wouldn't necessarily try to correct her beliefs or conclusions, you know. Like I would raise questions about like, oh, but don't you think the reason why dad is doing this or that might also have to do with the fact that he's overworked or, yeah, but I just, you know, I'm just trying to be more attentive to her position and, you know, to the kinds of experiences that she faces on a daily basis. Because of course it's quite challenging for her to live with a man whom she obviously is still disappointed in, right? Because of this promise that he had made decades ago, but he never fulfilled. And my father, of course, is a very like tough guy. Like he is also a very controlling person inside the household, and he works a lot for the sake of all of us, but he's authoritative and he always wants to be respected before other people, you know, and my mother obviously like she bears the burden of this like quite heavily as well. So I guess that's one of the examples in which I try to also understand her position. But of course, like I guess like a lighter, a fluffier example is that one time I managed to convince her that cannabis is not so bad.
Wow. Listen up, everybody, strategies.
Yeah. No, sometimes I feel like I'm using my mother or my family as like my political guinea pigs, like my political communications guinea pigs, which is really fun. I one time I had a conversation with her, just like via chat, WhatsApp chat, and you know I asked her all these questions like, yeah, but sometimes you would take like sleeping pills and all that, right? Like, doesn't that mean you're also dependent on them? And so I would ask like these questions that are quite easy and accessible, and at the same time would make her think about, oh yeah, maybe it's not so bad, this one plant that everybody's been prohibiting and all that. So it has its ups and downs, and whenever I have these small victories, I always celebrate them because it doesn't happen a lot. No, and eventually when she came to the Netherlands, she actually enjoyed smoking it. So
So wait, so you went from convincing your mom that cannabis wasn't so bad to her coming to the Netherlands and smoking it with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So you were basically like the best convincing, like the most convincing person ever.
Yeah. Well, that's just one thing. So and
that is not just a small one thing. That's a big thing.
Yay, me!
I have to say that this part of Dewi's story kind of blew my mind. Not only did she start the conversation about cannabis with her mom, but her mom was open enough to think about it and even try it out for herself with Dewi while visiting her in the Netherlands. It still makes me uncomfortable to drink in the presence of my family. The thought of passing one to the left with my parents is a complete non sequitur. So many things would have to be different for that scene to be part of reality. Of course, I had to ask what smoking up with her mom was like for Dewi.
Well, it was interesting because she was all like, "Oh no, I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't feel anything." And then she put it down, and then 5 minutes later, she would actually take the spliffy and she would light it herself, and she smoked it again. And it's like, oh, whoa, easy. But I know for a fact that my mom also occasionally enjoys smoking with her friends, like smoking cigarettes. That doesn't happen a lot. Like she felt quite liberated, like just being with her daughter and, you know, this faraway land away from her annoying husband, just enjoying like a substance that turned out to be quite safe, safer than many other substances. I think she enjoyed that.
I wonder, you know, just thinking, because I try to think about this when I think about my parents, and, you know, we're all young once, right? And when we're young, we want to go out into the world and explore and try things. And I wonder if, you know, if without the restrictive upbringing that your mom might have had, if she had the same opportunity as you to go abroad and to expand herself, if she might also have made some of the same choices as you did.
I think so. And I think the reason why our relationship is still kind of problematic right now might also have to do with the fact that she might be jealous of the life that I'm living right now, you know? I don't think she regrets like having children and, I don't know, living such a religious life. And yeah, but at the same time, she's always wanted to, like, for example, improve her English and talk with foreigners and going abroad and studying about other cultures, or, you know, she's always had that drive as well that I think I also have in me. But obviously, like, she didn't have the means and the opportunity to just, you know, go abroad when she was 16, or something as simple as like birth control, right? And also she didn't have the financial means to get the same kind of education or opportunities as I've had. And I think that's also partly why she pushed me to first to go to this all-girl Catholic high school, which was considered such a prestigious school and all that. And she pushed me to also, improve my English, work on my English and study abroad and all that. But I think on the other hand, she never really expected that I would rebel in terms of like my faith and my values, that I would deviate so much from the norms that she grew up and that she still believe in, Yeah, I think there are certain consequences that she views as negative. I have a feeling that she just tries to ignore that. Like she just tries to like turn a blind eye on it. I think in a lot of ways, she's also envious of what I have, of the freedom that I have. And it's interesting.
What Dewi described reminded me of another common experience I've heard from other third culture people and children of immigrants. This looking back on your culture of origin with judgment. I think this is actually quite a normal process, not limited to third culture people or immigrants, because it's part of the process of differentiation. This is like when you leave home for the first time. And even for people who move to another city in the same country, to look back on what used to be home with a judgmental eye because now you're becoming different. You're trying to define which parts of yourself are like your family and which parts aren't, which parts of you fit into your culture of origin and which parts of you don't. All of this also belongs to the natural process of maturation and individuation. And ultimately, this is what this show is all about. Understanding how people bring integration to all the parts of themselves together into a unified whole. Dewi has lived on 3 very different continents and in 3 very different cultures and done all these interesting things. With every step that she's taken in her life, she's taken a step closer to being her authentic self. I wanted to know if there was still something that was unfinished for her.
It's very interesting because since we spoke a lot about my experience in high school and, my relationship with Lydia and all that, I've actually been thinking a lot about reaching out to Lydia. I'm not sure how or when or what I would like to say, but I've been thinking a lot about it. It's just something that I feel like I need to do at some point, in the near future. It's a lot of like my energy and I think a lot about, how I would like to improve my relationship with my family and all that. But I feel that there's always been this gap or this sort of void in me that I feel is partly related to what I experienced with Lydia. And of course, I'm just, I'm also very much interested in hearing her story, like, what she's experienced all these years and what kind of life lessons or challenges. And yeah, I have no idea still, like, how it would happen or if it would happen or if she wants to even like meet me or be in contact with me again or anything. So yeah, I think that's just been something that I've been thinking a lot, and I am not sure when I would go to Indonesia again in the near future, but for sure in the next year or so.
If you could say something directly to Lydia, imagine that she was listening and that she understood English. But if you could say something directly to her, what would you say?
I would like to ask, like, what happened? Where did you go? And I hope we could meet, someday in the near future. And and I guess I should also thank her for having, been a very good friend when we were in high school together and all that. So I'm very happy that I'm sharing this story as well. We'll see how things go. And yeah, it's I think it's a topic it's a part of my life that's very much close to my heart, and therefore it's always quite difficult to get the right words or to actually know what I'm feeling or what I'm thinking, so.
What was becoming clear to me was that Lydia was present both in Dewi's past as well as in her future, a possible future in any case. And what's been striking is that while I thought I was guiding Dewi through a conversation about her third culture identity, the story we've actually heard revolves more around Lydia and Dewi's journey to discovering her sexuality. At first covertly in Indonesia, then openly in the Netherlands, and now in a kind of middle ground in Morocco. a place that resembles Indonesia in religion, and which also doesn't offer legal protection against discrimination for people of the LGBTQ community.